If you are an athlete dealing with a knee injury right now, these are 3 Olympians in Paris 2024 that you absolutely want to watch. Plus, let me give you 5 tips so that you can rehab like an Olympian. My name is Emily Barnhart. I'm a sports dietitian. I run the Injury RD, where I help injured athletes fuel and learn how to eat for their comeback and also just feel comfortable in their body during a really weird time. Number 1, let's talk about Mallory Swanson. You will see Mallory with USA Soccer in Paris, hoping to add a few more goals to 34 that she already has. She tore her patella in April of 2023, got surgery for that, got a really nasty infection, had to get a second surgery for that, then spent 11 months in rehab. Just keep on keeping on. That's what she told Just Women's Sports on their Snacks podcast. It's super simple. Eventually, the hard times and adversity will pass. And then, most importantly, she says, it doesn't get easier, but it will pass. I feel like I see this pattern with a lot of injured athletes that I work with, especially at month 2, month 3, month 4 into their injury, where they're really in the thick of the grind, but the finish line seems so far away. And I think Mallory has a really good message for us here that sometimes you just kind of got to accept that it sucks, and it's kind of going to suck for a little bit, but you have to keep showing up for yourself day after day, and time will pass. It will pass. You will get through it. And it kind of sucks. But sometimes when you are in the thick of that, it can be helpful to see athletes that are doing their thing again. So you can watch Mallory and the U.S. Women's National Team in Paris on July 25th, Zambia. That's when their pool place starts. Also, I think what's maybe really important to know here is that less than a year after this injury, at the time, Mallory signed the biggest deal in the National Women's Soccer League. She signed a multi-million-dollar deal with the Chicago Red Stars. And yes, most of us here are not professional athletes, but it can be really helpful that life can look a lot different in a year. And keep on keeping on. You will get through it. Number 2 on our list is Brody Malone. Now, in March of last year, he tore multiple ligaments in his knee. He fractured his tibia, and he did this specifically on his high bar dismount. If you don't know anything about gymnastics, high bar is usually the most fun, the most dynamic to watch. It is absolutely insane. He ended up with 3 surgeries. According to some news sources, some doctors and some coaches really didn't think he would be able to come back to all of his events. But after all of that, he showed up for his comeback at U.S. Championships this year in a major way. So what would he tell you? What would he want you to know? At Olympic trials, he told reporters, you got to have confidence in yourself that you can do it. He's letting loose a little bit more. He's having a little bit more fun. He says he enjoyed it. He said that he set little goals every day that he knew he could achieve, and that's how he kept going. And we hear this all the time, but this is, for a lot of you, a really long process, and it can be really daunting and overwhelming, and you can feel like you're standing still. So I think those little daily goals can be massive. Now, remember, Brody had a little bit of a disappointing run in Tokyo. He came in 4th on high bar, and I'm sure between that and this injury that people had a lot of major doubts about, he has a big fire underneath him heading into Paris, really hoping for an event medal. And then, honestly, this year, men's team might be able to pull off a medal. I'm really excited to see what happens there. The men start on Saturday, July 27th. So keep your eye on Brody to see how he does. And then last but definitely not least, we have Jordan Poulter. Now, like I said, I have a contract with USA Volleyball, but I don't really like to talk about those athletes because that's a completely separate job than what I do in the Injury RD with the athletes I work with online. And it just kind of feels weird to cross that over sometimes. But I know Jordan would be totally fine because I asked her at practice the other day. I know she would be totally fine letting me say that she is a complete badass, and this comeback was gnarly and honestly really inspiring to watch. While playing professionally overseas in December of 2022, Jordan tore pretty much everything there is to tour. She tore 4 ligaments and she had some meniscus damage, and it has been an 18-month road to get back on the court and ready for this Olympic Games. At practice in California the other day, I asked Jordan what she would want athletes to know that are also dealing with an injury, and she told me, I came out of this injury in the best shape of my life. Because of the recovery duration, again, this was an 18-month road, I was allotted a long runway to recalibrate some lifestyle habits. I got to chip away at my goals instead of feeling like I needed to rush it and restrict. Now, I think that's really lovely. And obviously, she knows her audience here. She knows that I am going to love that golden nugget, that we're going to take our time and we're not going to restrict food in order to change some body composition goals. But I think there's something even more important to share here when it comes to Jordan's story. In multiple interviews over the last year and a half, Jordan has mentioned her team and how hard it was to do this rehab without them. I don't know if you guys know this, but a lot of our national team players, men and women, they go play professionally overseas every year for 7 or 8 months. And then they come to California, they practice and they train with Team USA. And honestly, they have a really grueling travel and tournament schedule in that summer. It is really nonstop. But because of that, there was a pretty large chunk of time where Jordan was basically the only athlete in the Team USA gym. And there were many days where when she came in, it was only her and our physical therapist. The people that surround you in this process are everything. And even if they're not physically there with you, it's important that you open up to them. So when they call, or even if it's in person, people say, hey, how's it going? Tell the truth. Be authentically yourself. Let people show up and be in the mud for you, right? I mentioned earlier with Mallory, of course, that sometimes this sucks and we have to accept that. But that doesn't mean that you have to accept that alone. And you're probably constantly getting asked, how are you? How's it going? How does it feel? And my challenge to you is be honest. When you watch the women's national team take the court this year, know that they take teammateship very seriously. And Jordan really is the embodiment of this. Volleyball is all about communication with your team. And I really want you to bring that energy to your physical therapy and your comeback as well. Tell your friends how you're feeling. Ask your sports med team questions. Pool play for women's volleyball starts on Monday, the 29th, and they play China. So how do you come back like an Olympian? I think other than the obvious, I have 5 observations and tips for you. Number 1, track your biodata for patterns with your team. And I do not mean, if you know me at all, you know that I do not mean just the number on the scale. That really, really doesn't tell us much. We can look at the number on the scale in conjunction with other things, in conjunction with circumferences or strength or things like that. But let's also get beyond that. I mean, let's track things like energy, swelling, mood, pain, strength, motivation, whatever. What symptoms pop up in various stages of your menstrual cycle? Does that impact how your knee feels? Does a certain pre-workout meal feel really good and you tend to get more out of that PT session when you have that pattern in your life? Does a specific friend help you feel more motivated? Is there a certain time of day or pattern that using your PT is more beneficial for you? There's all sorts of things that you can learn about your body in this time, and your biggest thing that you can do right now is kind of pay attention to that and notice patterns. I also think, coming back to what Brody Malone said, it's so important to set those small goals. And when we are tracking those little things and looking and taking a step back and finding those patterns sometimes, when you are feeling stuck or when you are feeling like you haven't gone anywhere, can we then confirm or deny that feeling with actual data? And if we are stuck, can we then look at that data to figure out how we need to adjust and shift? So that data can be so helpful if you feel you can look at it from a step back and it's not going to impact your day-to-day mental health. Number 2, I want you to get multiple opinions sometimes and really focus on providers that you trust. Now, I will caveat this and say more than 3 opinions can be really overwhelming. So let's not go crazy here, but sometimes 2 opinions can give you some peace. And this can be a really anxiety-filled process. So it's okay to get a second opinion. Along those lines, when you are finding your providers, make sure you're asking questions about an athlete's return to function. We don't just want to return to normal, acceptable day-to-day human function. We want to return to being able to use our body at a higher level, to be able to use our body for our athletic goals. And your provider should know how to push that boundary. Number 3, I'm going to say periodize your nutrition, including your supplements. I've said it multiple times in this video already. This is a long process that can be really helpful to break it into chunks and have smaller goals. Brody obviously talked about those day-to-day goals. I think sometimes there's a 6-week goal or a month goal, or even I like to break rehab into 3 separate chunks where we kind of have our healing phase after surgery, we have our rebuilding phase where we're building up that tissue, and then we have our return to play phase where we're getting back on the field or the court or whatever. There are different goals within each and all of these phases, and there is different nutrition and different supplements especially that can support those goals. So be really smart and fine-tune how we're going to do that. Actually, on that note, maybe let's make this number 4, just periodization in general. Ask your sports med team or your coaching staff or whoever how they are managing your progression. They should have a very clear form. And when you ask them about load management, they should be able to have that conversation with you. Load management is so important. Load management is how you continue to move forward. Number 5, I want to encourage you to become really comfortable with who you are outside of your sport. I always say that you're going to have 2 projects during rehab. One is really along the lines of that bio data. It's about learning as much as you can about your body, everything that impacts it during this rehab, everything that's going to tweak or modify your ability to get back to that goal. You're going to learn a lot about yourself. But the second goal or second project should be something completely outside of your sport, something that you can do just for fun. Do you want to learn how to cook? Do you want to maybe tap into your creative side because suddenly maybe now you have that time and it's fun for you to paint? Find something that interests you and do it just for fun. You would be surprised how many athletes I know that take up knitting in their rehab. Knitting specifically, or pottery seems to be the big rage lately. And that's super fun. It's just a different side of you that you don't get to explore that often. And then bonus, because I was thinking about this the other day while I was watching the Simone Biles documentary on Netflix, find the people that get you through and lean on them authentically. In the episode, Simone talks about her mom doing her hair before her competition. And I want you to imagine how much stress, how much pressure is on Simone leading into a competition. She is expected to win. The whole world is watching, especially something like an Olympic Games. It only happens once every 4 years. She's fully capable of doing her hair. But how calming, how relaxing to melt into the rhythm of your mother braiding your hair before a competition where you have that much pressure. Someone that has taken care of you since you were very young. Someone that knew you and loved you before you were Simone Biles. Someone that's going to love you no matter what the outcome of that competition is for her. Like, I feel like I'm getting calmer just thinking about it, how I just was so touched by that moment that documentary showed. I want you to think of that feeling and what could you inject into your life that might bring you something similar, that might, again, kind of authentically help you through this process. So this year in Paris, keep your eye out for Mallory Swanson on the pitch, for Brody Malone in the gym, and for Jordan Poulter on the court. I am so excited to see what happens with these 3 athletes. And if you think there's an athlete that has made an incredible comeback that I'm missing, I'm sure there are plenty. Comment on who else we should keep an eye on in Paris. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. And if you have a specific question that you want me to answer, check out the show notes of how you can submit that. My name is Emily Barnhart. I'm a sports dietitian, and in whatever way, shape, or form feels good to you right now, I hope that you are fueling your rehab.